Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. U.S. President Donald Trump has been signaling that diplomacy takes priority in his determined efforts to prevent the Islamic Republic of Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. He stopped short, however, of striking the Islamic Republic and gave his emissaries wide latitude to elicit concessions, but the other option remains in the background through aircraft carrier task forces and an aerial armada. The next move on the chessboard is now Iran's, but if it tries to stall or outsmart Trump, it may find itself paying dearly and regretting its tactics. Joining us to discuss this matter include, all the way from the West Coast in the United States, Professor Russell Berman, who formerly served as a senior advisor at the U.S. State Department's policy planning staff, currently the director of the Middle East and Islamic World Working Group at Hoover Institution, and a lecturer at Stanford University. It's great to have you with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
Absolutely, Russell. Also joining us elsewhere here in Israel is retired Brigadier General Relik Shafir, formerly an Israel Air Force commander, as well as a fighter pilot, among others. It's great to have you with us, General.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon indeed. And last but certainly not least, as ever, Mr. Amir Oren, our TV7 editor-at-large. Amir, this is a topic that naturally has been discussed at length. Nevertheless, it remains very much at the headlines of global affairs and regional affairs at that, with direct and indirect implications to the state of Israel and the national security of the United States of America. The floor is yours.
Well, General Shafir greeted us with good afternoon. As Ronald Reagan used to say, it's morning in America, it's evening in Tehran, and never the twain shall meet. But what is the minimum goal for the Ayatollahs? Survival of the regime, even after absorbing a blow by the mighty U.S. armed forces. What is the optimal goal? To have the sanctions lifted and their economy revived, and thereby lessen the societal pressure. Can these two goals coexist side by side? Only if Khamenei gives his own emissaries what you called the wide latitude that Trump has given Kushner and Witkoff, along with Admiral Cooper, who joined them in Oman for the first round of the talks. Right now, it doesn't seem plausible, but politics and diplomacy have strange ways to get at compromises.
Indeed. Well, Professor Berman, I'd like to refer the next question to you. The spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry, Mr. Baghei, has come out and stated that the whole matter of Iran aspiring to achieve nuclear weapons is one big conspiracy, and that Israel was responsible to that to promote that conspiracy and that narrative, going as far as saying that the United States should not be listening to Israel since it's not in its interest to do so. Its interest is to listen to Iran and to reach with it an accommodated solution. He did not speak about, the fact that the United States has said zero enrichment and they said that no way. But that's apparently the current narrative coming out of Tehran. What are we to take out of that? And is the United States really that negligent and unable to achieve its own foreign policy, or recognizing at least the malign activities by the Islamic Republic of Iran when it comes to its nuclear ambitions, and that which was published by the IAEA and so many other organizations around the world?
Jonathan, the fact that an Iranian spokesman spouts anti-Israel or anti-American positions is dog bites man. I mean, this is what they've been doing since 1979.
Right.
Maybe in your recitation of that statement that I haven't seen itself, there might one might see an effort to drive a wedge in the United States between the more hawkish and the more isolationist wings. I'm sure the Iranians are up to that. They're no fools either. They follow what's going on in Washington intensely and try to insert themselves into it. You asked whether negotiations can succeed. I think that the negotiations may very well succeed for the Iranians if they're able to drag them out until the point where the United States is distracted or the election cycle kicks in and the administration can't focus on a tough agenda in Tehran. President Trump has given his emissaries full latitude, but even they can't void the law of gravity and the laws of elections. That by this I mean that there are limits to what they can bring back from negotiations that would have credibility in the American public. If they come back with something that is plausibly presented or misrepresented as just JCPOA all over again, that's an enormous political blow to President Trump and to the Republican Party. President Trump, of course, isn't going to be on the ballot, but he does have to worry about the outcome of the midterms. If the Democrats take over Congress, he's facing impeachment. So no, they don't have infinite latitude. They have latitude, but they can't give away the shop.
So this is really important. The Iranians aim to drag their feet to the point where the midterm election cycle is kicked or starts. What date do you define as that moment? And can it be truly quantified in such a calendarian fashion?
Well, the elections are in November.
Right, but
The
the cycle happens before that. So.
Yeah, sure. I think this has to be wrapped up by in the next couple of months. Because after that, campaigning will start. Campaigning doesn't really start in earnest until after the summer, but the framing of it takes place earlier. President Trump wants another foreign policy victory like he achieved in Venezuela. But it has to be a real one. If it's a hollow victory, if he comes back with JCPOA with lipstick on it, he'll be raked over the coals.
Well, that's an important point by itself. General Shafir, I'd like to hear your take on the military angle to this challenge, since naturally the landscape right now is very much focused on the Iranian question, but other issues may emerge, and that is something that the Islamic Republic is taking into its equation. Looking at the Middle East theater, is there somewhere else that should be taken into account, and potentially, if the Iranians trigger some type of conflict, potentially vis-a-vis Lebanon or the Houthis or somewhere to distract, so to speak, the United States, would that help in any way?
I think the Iranians' cards are not what they used to be. The Lebanese, even the Houthis, um, can only play a minor part because their powers was diminished in the theater to such an extent that they really can't be part of the game. Certainly not Syria, which changed hands. And so the Iranians are left alone. Even the Russians are not playing with them anymore. But we need to take into account a religious political element of the Shia. Basically, the Shia before Khomeini came into power, where the trodden down and miserable losers on earth since the Battle of Karbala in the 8th century, and consider themselves to be quite passive. But the new age of Iran is more towards the Mahdi, which is the Messiah. It became more messianic and proactive, and by that meaning that they're willing to sacrifice a lot to reach their goals, even if they know that they're going to lose. This is part of the new type of religious fanaticism that engulfed the Middle East. So the Iranians are threatening their neighbors to light a fire in the countries around them. That is ranging from Saudi Arabia, Oman, etc. And also Israel is a target in a way to push them to pacify the Americans. Out of all their goals, which is to continue their nuclear program, their ballistic missile project, and lifting the sanctions, they will have to give in on at least one. And I think they may give in to the nuclear because that will pacify the Americans. They could wait out this president and wait for the next one. And they're known to have patience. So they might let the uranium be taken out or part of it, inspections in their nuclear sites, and wait for a better time to re-energize their nuclear program if they get the sanctions lifted in a way to appease the general masses, who are not pro-revolutionary. So I think in this kind of a scenario, that's their card, given on what is important for the president to show for the elections in order to pacify and then play for time.
Indeed. Well, Mr. Oren, President Trump has been very consistent when it comes to degrading Iran's nuclear capabilities and aspirations. He's been consistent in his election campaign in his first term. Prior to that, this is the effort that he has put in the region, and he has not been distracted about this. Speaking with multiple individuals within his administration, they all said, always looking at the Middle East, priority number one, Iran does not gain nuclear weapon capabilities. The Iranians know this, and they have been trying to outmaneuver the United States time and again to try and find a way to push back, so to speak, on the potential spark that could bring about the demise of the Ayatollah regime, and by that delay the so-called 12er Shia Islam dominance from taking over the world, which is their ultimate aspiration per their own religious writings. And therefore, within that context, the one thing that they did not necessarily calculate is the dire economic consequences to their actions that have sparked the uprising in Iran that seek a genuine grassroots change, first and foremost to their own lives. But obviously, the Ayatollah regime being the main obstacle to their own lives these days, they do seek some type of regime change, bringing about the death of tens of thousands of people. Now, the Iranians still see the nuclear program as a bargaining chip that really fuels their capacity to maneuver vis-a-vis the West. Is that still the case, however?
The Iranian regime has been realistic enough to understand that if Israeli intelligence, along with other agencies, finds that Iran has crossed the threshold, Israel will strike immediately. And therefore, they were careful not to cross the threshold, to get close to it, but not to cross it. They are willing to sacrifice the nuclear file, as has been said here, because you probably remember the prophet Jonah, who was thrown overboard because the ship was overburdened, which is how he found himself in the belly of the whale and later in Jaffa. If they need to, they will throw overboard the nuclear file, which is their insurance for the regime's survival.
There's a difference, though. Jonah told them to throw him overboard. I don't think that the nuclear bomb will tell them to throw themselves.
Yes, but this is why the nuclear file is more important than the ballistic missiles, for instance. Many countries have ballistic missiles. Right. North Korea has ballistic missiles, and there is no demand that it gives them up. And now drones can cause damage along with ballistic missiles. And Saudi Arabia has been the recipient of ballistic missiles from the Houthis. Later, Aramco in 2019 was hit. But all in all, if the nuclear file is being dealt with, Trump will be satisfied, declare victory, because what Trump needs is a better deal than the one Obama got, which is why our panelists rightly say, if he is perceived to get only a JCPOA 2.0, he hasn't done a lot.
And he knows this because his political rivals will take this and hold it against him. But Professor Berman, I'd like to hear your take on this, and from a former senior advisor of the policy planning staff, looking at the U.S. policy today, which is somewhat ambiguous, even though the doctrine, the doctrines presented in the National Strategic Document ultimately do provide a certain framework. From a geostrategic perspective, and both President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance have been very vocal on this, America is seeking to somewhat not only limit but also diminish the number of nuclear warheads globally. And if the Iranians do break out in any capacity, this would mean a nuclear race all over the place, not just in the Middle East, but in Europe, in Asia, or rather in Southeast Asia, as well as in Africa, potentially. That is not something it can afford.
There's a strength that's also a weakness in the current American foreign policy. The strength is that there's a real disinclination to engage in significant military activity. This administration is not going to put boots on the ground in the Middle East. That era is over for a while. This doesn't mean that there won't be targeted actions like in Venezuela, or that there won't be special operations, but there's not going to be a major war. President Trump wants to be seen as the peace president. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize, which is one piece of this for sure. At the same time, as he broadcasts that, the Iranians know that. He knows that they know that he's unlikely. He's disinclined to engage in major military activity. This doesn't preclude the possibility, but this is part of their bargaining strategy. They know that he'd rather be seen talking than in attacking. He might eventually attack, but we can't predict the future. In terms of not predictability, I agree that the Iranians might well be willing to throw their nuclear overboard at some point, because they know they can revive it at any point. There's no guarantee that, just like we don't know who what the next administration in Washington will do, we don't know what Khamenei's successor will do. Assuming there's not a radical democratic regime change, they could just put the nuclear in mothballs and pull it out 5 years hence. Once a country has the knowledge as to how to put this together, you can't take that knowledge away.
Right. With that being said, and General Shafir, I'd like to bring you into this conversation. We are looking at a scenario, as you just mentioned, Professor Berman, that the only guarantee to ensure that the Islamic Republic of Iran does not gain nuclear weapons is not a piece of paper, but rather regime change. That a other government takes the reins of power and rules that country. I assume that is in the calculus. in Washington, as well as here in Jerusalem, and other countries, including in Europe. But what is going through your mind within that context?
Iran is a country of over 100 million, many of whom were educated, were highly educated in the days before the revolution, and they have scientists, as Professor Russell mentioned, and the know-how, the willpower. They're in such a position at this time that they might calculate that they need a better environment to go ballistic in both senses. For the West, so to speak, the devils in their eyes, this is an opportunity that may not return, in the sense that the Iranians have no support from the Russians. The Chinese don't look at them as a very important ally or player. The whole U.S. Force is centered around Iran, the Hormuz Straits, and the Indian Ocean. Israel is poised, and I don't think there is a better moment in history to change things in Iran in two ways. One of them is to completely remove their nuclear program. It can be done from the air, and hit the IRGC and the Basij forces that are guarding the particular government of Iran as it is now, and take them out, and maybe allow the citizens of Iran to display what they have started with last month. So there will be no better time, and we're still far from November, and for this to take place, it's probably at least 1 month until this kind of conflict will die down, with some costs maybe to oil prices, or some oil refineries in the Middle East. That could be the cost. But history does not present such chances many times, and this is the time. And I'm saying this whether it's good for Netanyahu or not. This is the historic time, and that's why it's the intransigence by Iran may cost them the livelihood of the Iranian Revolution. I think all the countries around would welcome this. Obviously, Israel will, and I think the United States may take this opportunity, the way we say it, by the horns. So depends if Trump sees himself as a historic figure, he may opt to do this and not really think about small tactics.
Indeed. Well, we're drawing near to the end of the program, and I'd like to give each of you the opportunity to have a closing statement or analysis. Please keep it focused on the topic that we had today, and that is Iran's nuclear ambitions. Can diplomacy work? Mr. Oren?
Nothing is in the same league as nuclear weapons, devastation-wise, which is why 45 years ago, this coming June, General Shafir and 7 of his buddies were sent to obliterate, as President Trump likes to say, the Iraqi nuclear reactor. However, Israel may yet regret a success in doing away with the Iranian nuclear ambition, because technology has changed to such an extent that there are now so potent sub-nuclear measures which the Iranians will be free to develop once the sanctions are lifted. So it could be a blessing in disguise for the Iranians to do away with the nuclear.
Well, I'd go much rather to see away with the regime in the first foremost, but that's I do get your point, Professor Berman. Your take?
So I agree with the general. This is the moment for it to be done, and we are still far enough away from the elections that any negative consequences would be forgotten, and the victory would be could be remembered if it is a victory. I'll just take one issue in his suggestion that everybody in the region will welcome this. I think there are strange developments in the Gulf right now. I would believe that in Riyadh, there's actually a worry about what it would mean to see an Islamist regime fall, because people in Saudi might take a lesson from that. The decision by Riyadh to deny the U.S. overflight rights should there be an attack was also registered in Washington. But in general, and certainly for the people of Iran who have lost any faith in their government, in the revolutionary government, it would be a positive for the regime to change.
General Shafir, 30 seconds, please.
Israel is poised for action, both on the defense and the offense. And considering what the Iranians have, this is a moment for Israel to wish for a complete strike on their both their nuclear and their ballistic missile program. And my wishful thinking is that this opportunity will not be let slip away.
And I'll reserve the last sentence, and that is by stating the Iranian people are amazing people who do deserve freedom, and their sacrifice should not be overlooked over the course of the last couple of weeks now. But with that, I'd like to thank Professor Berman, General Shafir, and Mr. Amir Oren for all of your insights. I'd like to thank you at home as well. Until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at tv7israelnews.com. Israel has launched operations
on Vladimir Putin.
helping Iran develop. We have logic, we have rationale, we understand how the system operates.